Okay, Liz Hersh, thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
So before we get into some of the things we discussed before we got here, tiny home village and all that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Liz Hersh. I'm the director of the city's Office of Homeless Services. Prior to coming to the city with the mayor, I ran the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania, which is the statewide affordable housing advocacy organization, and we won the first state housing trust fund, which this year will have $60 million for affordable housing.
Tell us a little bit more about that. How does that work?
It's a scrape basically from real estate from transfer taxes, and it's administered by the Housing Finance Agency, and it supports all kinds of development, preservation of affordable rental throughout the state of Pennsylvania.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about the Office of Homeless Services.
Okay, we're the city entity charged with providing the leadership, coordination, planning, systems, all the support for the city-funded network of homeless services. And our mission is to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring.
So I think when we talk about homelessness, people have an idea. But what is the actual definition of homelessness? And does that include people who are home insecure as well?
In terms of HUD, which is our regulatory body, that's a federal agency, no. But that's really much more the affordable housing world, that in Philadelphia is under planning and development. We work mostly with people who are imminently homeless, means, they could fall off the cliff tomorrow or today, and people who are literally homeless, meaning that they have no place to live that's fit for human habitation. So that would include cars, abandoned buildings, sidewalks, and it also does include shelters and transitional housing. Because it's not a permanent address, we still consider that to be homeless.
About how many people would you work with in a year?
Last year, what we would say 2022, it was a little over 18,000 people, between 18 and 19,000 people who touched our system. And about 12,000 of those actually came into a shelter. And then the others would have been in some kind of long-term housing program or gotten homelessness prevention services. So it's quite significant. It's a lot of people. We really think of it kind of as the bleeding edge of housing insecurity. So, people who, their car breaks down, they have an unexpected medical bill, they get laid off, all kinds of things happen to people, and they just, can't stay where they are.
So that number, that's a huge number. Is that a normal year, or is that?
Yeah,
okay.
That's a pretty normal year. Pre-pandemic, we had gotten up to about 20,000. During the pandemic, our numbers actually went way down. We think that the economic stimulus payments that people were getting, the child care tax credit, all of those things had a dramatic impact. And we were able to provide more housing resources because of all the extra COVID resources. But unfortunately, this is a return to normal. Plus, we had the eviction moratorium for a while there, and we had all that federal rental assistance, literally over $100 million. All of those things made a difference. And frankly, Lawrence, homelessness is a money problem.
Yeah.
People don't have, it's a lack of affordable housing. People can't afford to pay the rent.
Right. So when we're talking about 12,000 people last year.
Went to and spent a night in a shelter.
So how many, maybe this is really hard to know, but how many homeless people are there in the city generally?
There's a couple different ways to count. The official count is called the point-in-time count. It's conducted nationwide in every community the last Thursday in January, other than last year because of COVID. It was last Thursday in February. So it's an annual count, which we do. In that count, and based on that count, then we measure whether how we're doing year to year, and then how we're doing compared to other cities. So, for example, between 2018 and 2022, unsheltered homelessness, according to the point-in-time count, dropped by 27%. Overall homelessness, unsheltered and sheltered, dropped by 22%. Family homelessness dropped by 42%. So we saw significant drops. And that doesn't mean that new people aren't becoming homeless. And that's really the big thing, is we don't control the inflow, right? So that's the job market, the housing market, the educational system, the economy, the political system, all of those things, that the carceral system, healthcare, all of those things leave people in a situation where they become homeless, and we're really the response, the crisis response system. So kind of when all else fails, people end up being homeless. It means a lot of other things have gone wrong on the way, and about 70% of the people who entered our system in 22 were unknown to our system, at least for the prior 2 years. So that was a lot of new people who are coming in. We'll see new parents who have either the first or second child in the household, just really can't sustain them economically. We'll see people coming out of the correctional system, people coming out of healthcare systems, and we're also seeing a graying of the homeless population. So we're seeing more people who are older.
And people coming out of foster care as well. I understand that's
Yeah,
an issue.
there's, and I think it's less about directly out of foster care, because young people should have a permanency plan, and we just got some new resources. The city just got 50 new vouchers for youth aging out of homelessness, but it's, what happens when they're 20, 21, 23, without that, this is generational poverty by and large. So, when my son at 23, was unemployed, he could come home.
Yeah.
But if the family doesn't have those resources, or the family is disconnected, then they may fall back in. So it's really that sort of, the journey of young adulthood that is very difficult for people. Thankfully, we just got an $8.8 million grant, competitive grant called the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project from the federal government. And so we are developing a coordinated community plan to address youth homelessness that is actually being led by young people who themselves have lived experience of homelessness. Once that plan is approved by HUD, then we'll put out an RFP, and we expect to put over $8 million on the street next year to address homelessness among youth and young adults.
Now, do you find that if you don't have people who have experienced this themselves, the outreach is harder to bring people into the system?
I think it's a both and.
Okay.
Our outreach teams do have a lot of peers on them, and our staff and the staff of our provider network definitely have a lot of people who have lived experience. And so that's very, very valuable, because they get it. At the same time, there's a lot of wonderful social workers and case managers who just care deeply, have a lot of skills. So, I think there's no one size fits all. It's an all hands on deck kind of thing.
So, in this year's budget, it seemed like the mayor had mentioned a couple of priorities that were really interesting and really exciting.
Oh, good.
One thing that I thought that really stuck out to me was the tiny home village idea. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, so the city is piloting 2 different models of tiny homes. The one that the Homeless Services is taking the lead on is going to be called Sanctuary Village. And it's going to be 26 they're bedrooms that are disattached. So they don't have running water. The bathrooms and kitchens are central or communal. Okay. But they do have, HVAC and electricity and all of that. And they'll be on around kind of a common area. And they'll be for people. The first one will be for women. And people will be able to stay as long as they want, but it'll be temporary housing, and then they can move into another place. So it's basically like a private bedroom in a community setting. And what really sold me, and I was not an early adopter, I was very skeptical, because, Philly has tiny homes. We have row houses. They're 900 square feet, their original tiny home. But when I visited Seattle, and Sanctuary Village is based on the Seattle model, and I talked to the residents in a couple of the different villages, everybody said this was the thing that helped them come in. And so we really thought, let's give it a shot. And so we're really excited, and because it's new, it's hard, So we've been working for a couple of years now to kind of pave the way to make this happen. Yeah, but we're really excited about it. And then there will be another tiny home village that'll be different. This will be full apartments, but I think 500 to 600 square feet, and manufactured housing, and that'll be in West Philly. And that's more of a development project that's underway.
Oh, that sounds great. From what I understand, I'm not an expert on this in any means, but what I've read about it, it's almost a universal success, right? Like there aren't any downsides to this yet that anyone's noticed.
Not so far as we
Yeah.
know. I mean, I think what we're really taking a look at is cost benefit. We run 42 basically shelters already, and we have a lot of non-congregate shelters. And Philly has a lot of housing stock, so we have to balance out, building on a vacant lot, build, manufactured housing, stick built, so we're looking at all of those things. So this is why it's a pilot. But yeah, we're really excited about it. We think it's very promising.
And for people who maybe have experiences with the shelter system or afraid of the shelter system, this is like a much better option.
Yeah, this may work better for them. Although I will tell you that our shelters are safe. It's
of course.
remarkable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, but not everybody is going to thrive in a congregate setting.
Right.
And so, we like to have shelters that are non-congregate. I think the more choices we have, because people who are experiencing homelessness are still people. They still make choices, they still have preferences. And we feel like when people don't come into the homeless system, it's because we are not doing our job of meeting their needs. We never ever talk about resistant clients or anything. That's really old school. It's really incumbent upon the systems to do what people need so that they will come in. There's no forced march into shelter. You have to, or any other services, people have to choose it.
So is groundbreaking on these tiny home developments going to happen next year, do you think?
Yeah, we're hoping so. We're arcing towards this year, 2023. So,
good. Okay.
Yeah, cross your fingers, pray, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. So what are some of the other the initiatives that you're looking for fiscal year 2024?
Well, probably the most significant is 100 new supportive housing units. We have about 5,100 in our inventory. We've grown it by about 10% over the last 5 years. And this has really been one of the hallmarks of this administration. And it's really quite simple. Housing ends homelessness. Shelters save lives. Housing ends homelessness. And so as we are able to add deeply affordable housing for people, that is how we see the reduction in the numbers of homeless people. And more importantly, that's the foundation that people need for everything else, whether it's recovery, health, family reconciliation, education, employment. All of those things you have to have housing first.
Yeah.
So the investment in housing first by the city is the most important thing.
Well, and that's what it is. When we talk about the crime issues and the violence, from my point of view, it's poverty. And then how do you stop poverty? The first step is stable housing, right? So it all kind of fits together.
I agree.
Do you have any concerns about just using University City townhomes as an example? That's going to be sold to a developer. There's going to be issues there. Other places in the city are probably going to have a similar fate as these, and I'm not 100% sure exactly how the mechanics work, but I know some of them are able to be sold after 40 years.
There's a compliance period, and when that ends, they can be sold to market.
So is that something that, from your point of view, you have to keep an eye on to understand maybe we're going to have more people coming into our system that we have to work with?
Well, we do worry. We worry a lot about that. Anything that can be done to increase the supply of affordable housing is good. I think that City Council and the Mayor have really been activist on that front, whether it's home repair and basic systems repair, whether it's development, preservation, whether it's inclusive zoning, inclusionary zoning. All of these things make a difference. The more stability we can have for people with low and moderate incomes, and raising wages, I think one of the things we probably don't talk about enough is the income side. About half the people in our system report zero income. So, And then a lot of our folks are on disability, which is about $800 or $900 a month.
Right.
There's no such thing as a place you can rent for that amount
Right.
of money. So I think that some of the federal funds for people for income, if we double disability income or Social Security, we see a lot of people on Social Security, $10,000, $11,000 a year. There's just no place to live. So it's a both and. It's the supply of affordable housing and making sure that's available, and also making sure it's not just in one neighborhood or certain neighborhoods, but really everywhere, integrated, so it's part of communities. So we have that kind of vertical economic integration where you have people who have modest incomes and people who have, higher incomes all together. That's the best thing for everybody. But it's also assuring that people have enough money to live on. For example, the governor proposing a much higher minimum wage. All of those things help. So the family economy is not quite so fragile.
Mm-hmm. So how can people like me help the homeless? What can I do?
We encourage people to get involved. Certainly, making sure that their elected officials know that this is something really important and that they prioritize it, and then volunteer and donate. We have 70 or so homeless service organizations listed on our website. They're all over the place. They're easy to find. If they had more money, they could serve more people, and if they have more volunteers and supplies, they could serve more people and have a bigger impact. So anything that you can do to help these organizations who are doing the real work on the ground, that it feels like a little, but it's big.
Mm-hmm. And where can people find that information?
So our website, go to the phila.gov homeless services, and the list of our providers is there, or just Google homeless services.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Let's do that, and I'll edit it in.
Okay. The one thing that we ask everybody to do is if you see somebody who is homeless, to call the hotline. It's 215-232-1984, and they will send an outreach team out to offer services and engage people, and that is a lifeline. So we really rely on people calling that line when they see people experiencing homelessness, and it's available 24/7, 365 days a year.